There's a secret behind the rise of lo-fi music, which explains why most of us won't ever make it in the music industry. Listen to what an ex-vice president of Spotify had to say. The whole mission of our music application is to just have a play button. In January, the book Mood Machine was released, and it uncovers backroom deals, interviews with insiders, and internal communications from Spotify employees that show how the app, along with major labels, use shady and borderline illegal practices to screw over artists and trash music culture. I've spent countless hours reading, taking notes, and summarizing information from this book to expose this nonsense. First, let's get one thing out of the way. If you're an artist and you're not on Spotify, you don't exist. It's the biggest streaming platform by far, blowing Teamy Apple and Bezos out of the water. All of these artists try to leave Spotify at some point just to come back crawling after a few years. It's a necessary evil no one wants, but you must take part of it, like car insurance or D&D villains. So what would it take to make it big on Spotify? For that, I'm gonna use the help of my friend Chuck Beers, who plays in the punk band Stupid Bots, and he hopes to make it as big as Green Day one day. I'm going to take Chuck through the different eras of Spotify to see what hoops he have to go through today to make it in the platform. The streaming market is not distributed evenly. There are a few artists making a lot of dough and a lot of artists not making any money at all. So if Chuck Beers wants to make a humble living through streaming, let's just say 15 an hour, as much as a hangover Starbucks barista that fucks up your caramel macchiato, how many streams a month does he need? Probably not that much, right? Let's just say one person streams one time. The number is 20,000 streams. That is like packing Madison Square Garden every month just to make a Starbucks salary. But what if I tell you that I lied? Because the answer is 100,000 streams. That is like packing Wembley Stadium every single month to make the salary of a barista. But I lied again, because the actual number is 800,000 streams, which is like packing 8 Wembley Stadiums, 4 Madison Square Gardens, and 1 jam-packed New York City train with a pizza rat on it. Cute. If you want to know how the system picks winners and losers, you first need to understand how we got here in the first place. In 2008, the 3 major labels were losing a ton of money out on the high seas. Then Spotify came on the scene with the promise of a legit music app. So Spotify negotiated with them directly. Everyone else had to go through a third party. When the labels negotiated those deals, they were beneficial to them exclusively, obviously, with NDAs so no one could see these agreements. And with this power, they negotiated advances, minimum guarantees, and all sorts of shenanigans, including Universal being able to secure a minimum rate for the free version of Spotify, something not even the other majors were able to do. And this is crazy because this means that someone like Lady Gaga could pay 6 times more than Adele just because she's on a better label, even with the same amount of streams. And indies? Who gives a shit? No one does. Somewhere in here too, Spotify started gathering all sorts of user data. But hold on to that thought. Now, I'm sorry Chuck, but if you wanna make it in the music biz, you're gonna have to belong to one of the major labels, bro. But if there are all sorts of backroom deals covered by NDAs, what's the actual math to get paid? Gather around, kids. Let me tell you a tale. It says that the equation is revenue times share times pro rata. Revenue, what Spotify makes, minus taxes, fees, and other trash. Share, the share that labels negotiated with Spotify. Might be 60% for the labels, 40% for Spotify, who knows, NDAs. And then multiply this by pro rata, basically where the stream is coming from. Is it from a Duo account or a family account? Is the stream from Paris, France or Paris, Arkansas? Is it being streamed on a full moon? Does the streamer get the zoomies at night? If you're Chuck, you don't get to see any of this. None of the artists do. Ultimately, the system they created was successful for Spotify and major labels, while indies and artists lost negotiating power over their own work. But if we know how majors control the market, how does Spotify contribute to choosing winners and losers and the decay of music culture as we know it? Remember how I told you that Spotify was collecting user data? Come check this out. We are out here at Innings Festival in Arizona, where Kings of Leon and the Lumineers are headlining this weekend. We're out here trying to find a few music lovers to ask them a few questions. Why this music festival, you may ask? Because I'm here. That's it. There's no real reason. Who are you here to see?
Today, Sam Barber, Kings of Leon, and Casey Musgraves.
What bands are you here to see?
Last night we saw the Lumineers, but Casey Musgraves and
And I'm here to get some autographs from the baseball players.
Which was your favorite?
Kings of Leon today.
Yeah. Can you tell me 2 of their albums?
Oh, fuck.
Can you tell me 2 of their albums?
Oh, she might know.
Albums?
oh my gosh,
2 of her albums.
maybe Sex is on Fire.
That's a song though.
2 of their albums? I can't tell you the albums. I can tell you the names of songs.
Golden Hour and Rainbow.
You give me 5 songs.
Okay, Pyro, Waste a Moment, Notion, Revelry, and Sex on Fire.
Great, you got it.
Thought of You, and Better Year.
Can you give me 3 more?
A Give or Take. Caitlin, help me out here.
Tickets to this were not cheap. These are fans who were willing to stand in the Arizona heat and drink overpriced beers just to listen to the bands they like. But why is it so hard to remember songs and albums? If you want to know why people lost their connection to an artist's catalog, don't blame them. You first need to understand how Spotify uses data. And what I'm about to show you is horrible. By 2012, Spotify was still a small app, and they needed a way to grow their subs. So they hired a research company to do an analysis for how people engage with music. They realized that people listen to music while they're doing things like going to the gym, driving, banging. That's the moment everything changed. It was a huge revelation because they realized that most people are what they'd come to call lean-back listeners, the type of soulless NPC who just hits play and listens to whatever slop comes out of their headphones. So the company did a big shift. They redesigned their slogan, which went from play music now to music for every moment. They bought a company called Tunigo that created playlists based on listener activities and moods and pushed those playlists to the top of user feeds. And with that, Spotify could use data like skip rate, completion rate, and program stream share. That's just how long you've listened to a recommended song. To measure your music tolerance for the sole purpose of keeping you in the app as long as possible. These Tunigo people were playlist curators, and they had the power to determine what you heard on those playlists. But the major labels wanted to get in on this as well, so Spotify hired reps to collaborate with them, and each label had several reps assigned to them. Indies, on the other hand, had only 1 rep for all indie labels, and eventually this rep was fired and their role eliminated. It got to the point where indie labels had to talk to their distributor, who hopefully had a Spotify rep buddy, who hopefully can talk to a curator, who was hopefully in a good mood, and this is still the case today. If you were an artist with a well-connected label and management, you had a spot on one of these playlists, and if not, well, you had no idea how to land a spot in Morning Commute or Weekend Buzz or Totally Alt. All of this was happening while we were getting bombarded with chill vibes, mood boosters, and relax and unwind playlists. In an internal all-hands meeting, they celebrated the success of sleep playlists as the CEO said, "Apple Music, Amazon, these aren't our competitors. Our only competitor is silence." Chuck, you have to write music that fits a mood and activity. You can't just play punk and hope to make it. These focus on playlists based on activities and moods explain why we don't remember the names of albums or even the names of artists, but why has the general public lost that deep passion for music, or there is this perceived idea that music today sucks? Come check this out. Alright, stick with me on this one. I promise it all makes sense. Early lo-fi music sounded like this.
The speaker, motivational teacher with words that burn people, singing the headlines line with discourse.
It was sampling jazz and hip-hop mixed with rap. By 2013, the sound was shifting to this. Even though it was more instrumental, it still had movements and element of hip-hop. By 2019 though, the sound shifted to the lo-fi we know today, this. This was not a coincidence. There was a side of Spotify that was doing this. and at the same time, indie labels were losing revenue. Something really obscure was happening behind closed doors, and there are internal communication and documents that talk about it all. Back in 2015, playlists at Spotify were king. Chill vibes, morning commute, dinner with friends, they were perfect because curators took the time to match the vibe to your life. And remember, indie labels didn't have negotiating power, so these playlists were a main source of revenue for them. But playlists were expensive because Spotify had to license each song, and so the Perfect Fit content program was born. The goal was to save money by licensing cheaper stock music so they didn't have to pay full royalties when most users were only half listening to Sunset Chill. And executives argued that users wouldn't notice or care whether the songs came from real or fake artists, so the stock music started appearing in some of these playlists. Employees were given a new metric to follow, the percentage of Perfect Fit content in their playlists. And the more stock music they included, the happier their managers were. Curators, who'd been making great playlists for years, were now frustrated that their work was turning into a content factory. Some employees straight up refused to participate, so Spotify hired new curators, and these curators had no issues removing artists from chill playlists, especially lo-fi ones, and replacing them with fake artists. When new Perfect Fit labels joined Spotify, senior employees wrote on Slack, "Please prioritize adding." And of course, who loses? Indie artists. Now, if you think these fake artists are making a killing, think again. These people get paid per day and are essentially day laborers. And just like in any shitty job, they have a micromanager behind them telling them to play simpler. So for all the brain-numbing and joyless work these musicians do, they don't even collect royalties. They're essentially selling their IP for peanuts while generating millions for Spotify and the ghost labels. Allegedly. Now, for you to understand the magnitude of this, imagine you grew up with a Spotify executive and he says, "Hey dude, can you make some music for me?" And you say, "Bet." So you hire 20 people who each make like 25 fake artist accounts, and each of these accounts make 1,000 songs. And these songs get put on Morning Study, and this playlist makes it to every college student's homepage, which produces millions of streams. Like this homeboy, Johan Rohr, who has roughly 650 fake artist names and 15 billion streams. 15 billion streams! More streams than Michael Jackson. Of course, Spotify denies that this is even a thing. At the end of the day, in an internal Slack message in 2023, someone noted that there are over 100 mainstream playlists entirely made up of Perfect Fit songs. In other words, fake music. Chuck, if you actually want more than your girlfriend and your 5 followers on SoundCloud to listen to your music, you gotta turn down that lo-fi, dog. Oh, fuck off! We have to stop saying music today sucks. The music we get recommended and mainstream media shoves down our throats suck. But let's just say you're a Gold Star listener who goes out of their way to find real artists. Your go-to is Daily Mix and Discover Weekly. Those playlists are legit, right? Wrong. Let me show you the most nefarious, the most controversial, and maybe illegal practice that makes it harder for musicians like you and I to ever make it on their platform. Check this out. If you look at most social media feeds, you're going to find this. Here it is on Reddit, here it is on TikTok, here it is on YouTube. We know this, we expect this, it's just part of life. Here's how it shows up on Spotify. That's it, right? It doesn't show anywhere else in the app. That's because there are legal reasons for this. FCC rules prohibits anyone to front cash to a radio station or any broadcaster for them to play your song, in what is historically known as payola, which is a really freaking cool name. Under US law, radio stations must disclose songs that are pay to play, in other words, promoted content. Since Spotify is a music platform, they can take your cash to promote your music without labeling it. So they may have found another way. In 2020, Spotify announced Discovery Mode, which is a program where artists accept a cut on their royalties in exchange for promotion. Because if it has a landing page, it's more ethical than putting money in an envelope. But there was no indication that they were going to let the users know which songs were part of the paid promotion. This rocked some feathers with some employees. Get this, Spotify employees have a Slack channel called Ethics Club, where a group of them debate if the things they do are ethical. That's like buying a Cybertruck and asking yourself,
are we the baddies?
this is what employees had to say about discovery mode. Controlling more of the listening experience via programming pretty clearly benefits us more than anybody else. The boosted plays comes at the cost of other artists. The part I feel worse about is not making it clear to consumers exactly where and when this is happening. Isn't a lack of transparency what separates Viola from Marketplace? Artists are individually incentivized to pay us for placement, but suffer in aggregate for doing so. And a former employee put it this way, it's definitely a winner-take-all situation. They talk about how it's a win for Spotify, and it's a win for artists, and it's a win for listeners, but there's just no way that's mathematically possible. But officially Spotify says, we're not asking for any upfront budget or payment, which means there's no barrier to entry. But is that true? An internal document revealed that they had a goal of 30 to 50% of all recommendations to be paid promotions by 2025. So if 50% of all recommendations are paid promotion, what does that mean for the other 50%? And how many of those non-paid recommendations are stock music? In 2023, a ton of artists had signed up, and 50% of artists they categorized as top tier were using discovery mode. Last year, we set out an ambitious goal of getting to 30%. Surpassing 50% fell beyond our wildest dream. Congrats all! That year, Discovery Mode made 61 million euros in gross profit, allegedly. But if it wasn't bad enough, Spotify started bundling all of these weird tools like pop-up ads, showcase shelves, and the rest of Discovery Mode features into a package called Campaign Kits, convincing indie labels that these work best when purchased together. And of course, they want you to buy the whole kit. So indie labels are forced to buy all of these weird products that they didn't want in the first place, like paying for an ESPN, Hulu, and Disney Plus bundle just because you want to watch Andor. I don't want any of this crap anyway. It puts small artists in a situation where they have to choose. Either you sacrifice your low earnings to grow your fan base, or you keep your low earnings and compete against fake artists and artists who pay for promotion, knowing damn well that your chances of making it that way are minimal. And if you're a consumer listening to Discovery Weekly and Daily Mix, you have no idea you're being advertised to. Chalk, if you want people to listen to you, you're gonna have to give up your royalties, dog. I'm personally sick and tired of hearing boomers say music today sucks, because it's just not true. There's a lot of amazing music today, but it gets harder and harder to find when music apps are filled with all this crap, because they, along with major labels, have designed a system where artists always lose. Look at this article from Vulture about artists having odd jobs to pay the bills. In it, Steve Holmes from American Football talks about working in operations at ADP. And I don't know about you, but an artist that has over 1 million streams and plays big festivals should be able to sustain themselves with a decent living. Daniel Ek, CEO of Spotify, may say that 1 million streams is not a lot, but that's huge for most of us. And this is after we spent 10,000 hours mastering our craft and another 10,000 hours mastering social media to promote ourselves. This shit ain't easy, and CEOs need to be held accountable for how hard this is for us. Not only are we fighting against bad music, but then we have to fight against features like Smart Shuffle. I ran an experiment to see how long it took for an artist who fought to get paid to actually have their music play with Smart Shuffle. Go check that video out. Love y'all.